Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Good Guys Talk Back, episode 196. I am Nick Morawski, and this is a fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast. You can find this podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcasts. We're also on YouTube. Subscribe to that channel. We appreciate it. Just search Good Guys Talk Back. We're on Twitter at Good Guys TV. We've got a Facebook fan page. Just a few weeks away from starting up our officially season 5. We usually do that, the new season, around the winter meetings, which is just a few weeks away. Pretty crazy. I really appreciate you being here. We got some great stuff to chop up here. It's Thanksgiving week, a favorite holiday of mine for sure. To talk about all of this White Sox content, my dear friend, my co-host, Pat Hester. Hello, sir.
Oh, buddy, I am so excited to sit here and talk to you about White Sox baseball. This week has brought us, a chill in the air in this late fall. There's been some cold and some snow. And it got me to thinking about, and maybe it's different for you in the city, but me in the burbs, when it snows and there's like a heavy snow and you walk out, say, maybe to shovel your driveway, there's just that calm in the air, right, Nick? And it is not a lot of people out. There's obviously not any, bugs or animals making noise. It's just very silent and quiet and peaceful.
Yeah.
And it almost makes me think about Rick Hahn's office right now. Silent, peaceful, not a thing to be heard.
Quiet.
Oh, it's so lovely.
No disturbances.
No, do not disturb. So silent.
Don't wait until March.
But you know what? We can talk about rumors and ridiculousness,
sure. Yeah.
And that's what we do in the wintertime, Nick, because we're White Sox fans. So it's good to talk to you, buddy.
Do you don't have your tree up, do you, or
No,
any decoration? And it's okay if you
no.
do. No judgment. I wait till after Thanksgiving. You know me. This is my favorite holiday. Anything that surrounds, multiple side dishes, and we celebrate the feast. Oh my goodness, this is right up my alley. Not a lot of great, movies, and everybody has passed this holiday by. I mean, you go into any store right now, they cannot wait for Halloween to finish. I mean, I was in a Target, and this was like, right before Halloween, like October 29th, and you saw like the Christmas stuff already starting to get set up, like in a corner. It was almost like slowly, like every day, like 5 more feet, they're pushing it closer into the middle of the store so they could just take over, like, get this Halloween over. I want to take over Christmas. Hey, and I get it. There's a lot of people that have already got their stuff up, celebrate. Hey, do it, man. I can't watch the movies yet. We don't have the house decorated or anything. I'm savoring this week.
Yeah, you gotta savor this week for sure. You do what you want to do, but for me, the Christmas season that'll start Friday. I appreciate this week. It's going to be fantastic. And later on, if we have time, I'll give you some of my tips to making a fantastic turkey that you can be proud of if you're cooking, if you happen to be hosting like I am. 30 wonderful people jam-packed into my home, elbow to elbow, just and enjoying the holidays. But there are some good Thanksgiving movies.
Oh yeah, well, there's a few.
And one that comes to mind, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Your brother's favorite.
If you are a young person and you've never watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles with Steve Martin and John Candy, it is a classic. I highly recommend it. It is one of the best, if not the best, Thanksgiving movies out there. And I also recommend the Garfield Thanksgiving special, as I recommend all Garfield holiday specials, Nick. That's how I do it. That's how I roll. So those would be the 2 things on your to-do list as you're preparing for Turkey Day on Thursday.
Yeah. And then there's football and all that kind of stuff.
And that kind of stuff. And we go back in time, Nick. You think about Black Wednesday when we were in college.
Dear Lord.
That was a day.
Yeah.
And if you could make it through Black Wednesday and keep your meal down on Thursday, then you've really done something in life. And And now I can't say that I've had success in that in every year of my life, but
Yeah.
it's a big deal. And then you get into Black Friday with the deals and the
Mm-hmm.
shopping. And it's fantastic. So it's a fun week.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity to get together with old friends and family this week. So enjoy it. And Nick,
Mm-hmm.
else, I'm thankful for you, and I'm thankful
Oh,
we had
well,
time together
yeah.
to talk White Sox baseball.
Well said. Thank all of the fine listeners. Hopefully, this podcast travels with you safely wherever you're headed. Pass this podcast along, and I know you're going to be around family and friends, and you're going to be talking White Sox stuff. And there were some minor moves this past week. Right before the Rule 5 deadline, Sox added Bryan Ramos and Jose Rodriguez. Not a real surprise that they were going to be added to the 40-man roster. It brought the roster up to 38. And man, it was a crowded infield. When you look at what could be coming into spring training. And again, I don't know about you, Pat, but I'm pretty much sold on the idea that the second baseman is going to be an internal it's going to be an internal option. I really don't see the Sox going out and spending on a second baseman or trading for a second baseman. There's so many different avenues for them to go that they need to shore up some of these holes. I think they're going to use an internal option for second base. That's not a terrible hot take, but look, that's kind of, okay, they added these guys, and then you saw what happened on Friday with the non-tender.
Yeah, Adam Engel, obviously, the idea of you and I pining over an Adam Engel getting his starts every day in right field, that dream dies. And a Danny Mendick, who you took a real shine to over the past year and a big liking, and you really, I think you long for a Danny Mendick in your life, and maybe it was the mustache connection that you had with a Danny Mendick, but unceremoniously, hurt, with a knee injury. His year was cut short, and who knows what could have been with a Danny Mendick, Nick. But we'll have those very few memories that we had of a Danny Mendick, the dancing for dubs after wins, the up and down from the big club to the minor league club, and we wish Danny Mendick well.
He was a finalist for the American League Gold Glove at second base in 2020. Did you realize that?
Wasn't Yolmer Sanchez a Gold Glover?
He was a winner.
Oh, yes.
Yolmer Sanchez was a winner.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Danny Mendick, it's a weird situation. When he got hurt in June and suffered a torn ACL, he was, I believe, playing shortstop. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he was traveling, back into his right down the left field line. And Adam Hazley was coming in from left field, and there was that collision. Now, Tim Anderson was not playing that day. Okay, so if Anderson was playing, I mean, who could was it going to be Anderson that could have had a torn issue? But Mendick would have been at second base, perhaps playing second, and there would have never been a collision. I mean, I know that's a tough thing to follow there, a string of events, but he was on the up and up before he got hurt. And it felt like, yeah, they're crowded. The Sox are crowded at infielders, especially second base. However, if you're going to do internal, which I believe they are, let Mendick compete, so now your 40-man roster is at 35. What does that mean? That means that they're going to have to add, they're going to have to figure something out. Are they going to go, dumpster diving from other teams, non-tendered, or are they going to actually make a splash? I'm really disappointed that Engel didn't get more of a look in 2022. We had him healthy for a while, you know.
He did. He was healthy for a while, and I'm surprised that in terms of a fourth or fifth outfielder that he didn't, get signed back up with the big club. I don't. I don't understand why Adam Engel is not useful for your team. He provides you a lot of speed, a lot of fantastic defense most of the time, except for the drop ball in Baltimore. For most of the time, is a very sure-handed and fantastic outfielder. Can play all three positions if you had to. And given the health of a Luis Robert over the past couple of years, is kind of a nice we got to put this guy in a slot because we got somebody injured. But Adam Engel himself could not stay out of off the IL. So maybe that's why he ultimately gets left as the odd man out.
Yeah, he has suffered a lot of leg issues, lower body, hamstring stuff during his tenure. I think 6 seasons, parts of 6 seasons with the White Sox. His first year was Ricky Renteria's first year in 2017. Engel exciting in the outfield. Boy, I mean, he made some ridiculous plays, robbing home runs, robbing extra bases. He had some hamstring issues this past season, but I thought when he was healthy, he should have been definitely the outfielder above Gavin Sheets. But Engel's not a lefty bat, and they're looking for that lefty bat power, that balance, a lefty bat presence at least. And Sheets is what gave them that. At what cost? Defensively, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the issue. This is what Rick Hahn had to say about this whole non-tendered stuff here. We appreciate all that Adam and Danny did for our organization in 2022 and during prior seasons. As we have said at other times, a lot of consideration and analysis goes into the club deciding to forego the arbitration process and instead engage with players and their representatives as free agents. Our plan is to stay in contact with all 3 players and evaluate their ongoing fit with our club as we move forward through this offseason. That is, I mean, what else is Hahn going to say? Who knows? Maybe they do stay in contact. Maybe they do bring back. It's not like Engel was making much anyways. They saved a couple million by this move. I don't know. I think there's a team out there that if he goes through all the checks and balances as what have you, that might say, hey, we could definitely take an Adam Engel.
Yeah,
he could very well help our ball club and out in the outfield.
no doubt about it. And he seems like a gamer type of player, and he's one of the guys on our team that actually ran the bases well, Nick, and had some speed. And obviously, on a team that was so breadth of defense, provided you some defense again on most nights. So I would love to see an Adam Engel back if that was the case. Again, I don't really need to see an Adam Engel, starting, 130 games, but I think he provides you some quality depth in your lineup and in your ball club, and can provide you a lot of things in terms of pinch runner here or there, a defensive replacement, because left field's probably going to be a situation where we're going to need some defensive replacement situations. So we'll see. It'd be nice if that was actually true, that Rick Hahn says he'll stay in contact with their representatives. But again, don't ever believe anything a GM or representative says on a podium or in a press conference.
And there you have it. A little PSA from Pat Hester. I love it. So, yeah, again, a lot of holes. It creates even more question marks, I think. Not surprising. I'm not surprised what the White Sox did. It feels a little, we knew Adam Engel for a while. He's been through a lot. He's been on this team for a while. Same thing with Danny Mendick. I really felt bad that was how things ended for him because he was a bright spot for the White Sox. He really was. And who knows? He might catch on with another team. We shall see. Sox have a lot to do this offseason. They really do for this roster to get where I think maybe Pedro Grifol wants it. A guy that most likely is not going to be on the White Sox roster. It's not official yet, but it's pretty much official. Jose Abreu, it just doesn't look like he will ever wear a White Sox uniform. Never say never. We heard about, the Houston Astros, maybe Boston Red Sox, good fit. Talked recently on this podcast, and you folks listening, I'm sure chopped it up with other friends that, Sox fans, Cubs fans. Jose Abreu at the top of the Chicago Cubs list makes sense. Just this weekend, saw something on MLB Trade Rumors. Padres, the San Diego Padres, are making Jose Abreu a top priority this offseason with Josh Bell, Will Myers, and Brandon Drury, all now free agents. The Padres have a vacancy at first base, making Abreu a logical target for the Win Now team. And hey, it makes sense, man. It makes absolute sense. He deserves to be on a winning team. And I just started thinking, it's going to be surreal when he actually signs, Pat. It absolutely is going to be really weird when it actually happens. So I went back to 2019 when he signed that 3-year extension.
Did you get a time machine and actually go back to 2019?
No, I don't want to. I don't want to go back to that that time. I don't want to relive what's happened since 2019. Nobody does. And I found an article from Daryl Van Scoven, who writes for the Sun Times. And this is about basically Abreu's connection with Reinsdorf and what Reinsdorf has kind of communicated to him. And this was during that time, Pat, if you remember, when Abreu was saying, I'm going to sign myself if the White Sox don't sign me. And this is what Abreu said. I found it to be very interesting. Jerry several times has told me and my family that I am not going to wear a jersey other than a White Sox jersey. I believe him. I believe in his word. And like I said, I'm very happy with and loyal to this organization. Hopefully everything is going to pan out. To me, when I read that, it just it crushes even more that he is going to be gone. And it feels like Jerry saying that and communicating that to Abreu is like hometown deal. Take hometown deal. I love hearing you want to sign with us. And Abreu bought in that. Abreu didn't know any better because this was his first MLB team, his only MLB team. And Reinsdorf signs him, brings him, his family, everything here. And Abreu, it's almost like Jerry's like, I own you now. I've given you all of this. And it's really just a sad situation.
I wonder if Jerry just kind of thought, there's no way he's playing after 3 years. I won't have to worry about it. He'll retire. He's going to be past his prime. He'll probably want to be done and move on. I don't foresee him playing after 3 years. But, for as much as we've talked about, Nick, the lack of power this past year and the lack of, extra base hits that he still had some really impressive offensive numbers, ones that I am willing to let go and say, I think we've seen the best of Jose Abreu. I don't really think that we're going to, he's not on the climb, if you will, of his career. He's going to be on the decline of his career. And I'm always of the mind of, get rid of guys a year too early than a year too late. Okay. With that being said, I really think that, maybe the thought was that he'd be done and this wouldn't have to be a conversation. And I can say all these kinds of things and show my love for Jose Abreu. Do I got you
would
back
say
now?
that
You were frozen there for a minute.
Yeah, as you were too. It's the holiday season.
It's cold outside. It's 20
cold outside.
degrees. It's chilly. Got it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I would say that if you want him to stay in a White Sox uniform, well, then you make that happen as the owner.
Yeah.
You make him a deal that he can't refuse. And you say, I want you on this club. It all happened when they drafted Andrew Vaughn. That was the decision that this club was headed. Abreu saw what was going on, and what are you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, what are you going to do? And maybe Hahn and Williams are not in the same thinking as Reinsdorf. Is like, I don't know if that was really the right choice in 2019. Maybe we shouldn't have re-signed Jose Abreu. Again, for the record, I don't know how this goes if you bring Abreu back.
Yeah.
I get it. Like, how are you going to replace his numbers? How are you going to replace his leadership? How are you going to replace him, just the man, Jose Abreu? I don't know, but
the intangibles are hard to replace. But it'll be interesting to see, Nick, especially if he goes to somewhere like San Diego, that's traditionally a warm, place. Bray's always struggled the first month and a half of the season. He goes somewhere where he's going from spring training where it's warm right into a warm climate at his home ballpark to play the majority of his games. It'll be interesting to see if he has a nice turnaround and plays, hot to start rather than this kind of ramp up until we get to like late May and June where he actually starts to turn it on.
Yeah, that's a good point too. It feels like it could be San Diego. It really does. That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
We will see. Just off season is difficult to find content. I get it. I completely get it. Churning out daily episodes for Locked On White Sox. Hey, I absolutely love talking White Sox as you do, Pat.
Mhm.
But sometimes it's just, it's tricky to find content. And the folks at MLB.com, they're pining for content just like we are. And I get these email blasts, like it's almost like every day from MLB. I don't know what I signed up for. Somehow I don't know if it was through my season tickets or what, but I get these emails from MLB. And there's always these, crazy hypotheticals or almost to the effect of that Aaron Judge situation we talked about, that
Mhm.
Athletic article by Jim Bowden of like, here are 5 potential landing spots for Aaron Judge. And Bowden's quoting, the Albert Bell situation from 26 years ago of why the White Sox could land Aaron Judge. So this article, this email that I got recently was, and I'm sure a lot of folks saw this as well, crazy, proposing 7 surprise free agent ideas. And I sifted through it. I'm like, there's no way the Sox are going to be mentioned. Nobody's talking about the White Sox, unless it's just clickbait, just crazy stuff. And sure enough, the White Sox are indeed mentioned, and it's for Xander Bogaerts. And the gentleman that wrote the little blurb, Thomas Harrigan, wow, go and read this, folks, when you have a chance. It's everything that we complain about as White Sox fans of like why something won't happen. I mean, he breaks it down in this. The line in this little blurb that's classic is the White Sox may decide to pursue lower level options at second base and to hope for the best when it comes to their holdovers. But this is the type of money they should be thinking about if they are serious about a deep October run, assuming they can convince Bogaerts or Anderson to move to second base. I mean, it was riddled with all these like
Yeah.
if, ands, and coulds and hypotheticals. And the Sox aren't going after Xander Bogaerts because for a ton of different reasons. But what Harrington hit on in this article, though, was hope for the best when it comes to their holdovers. It's all about
Yeah.
this hope. Well,
Yeah.
guys return to their old levels, and it just gets me feeling really uneasy as we continue this off season.
Yeah, and I don't think it was. I read the same blurb, I believe, as you did. I don't think there was anything in terms of what a Xander Bogaerts is going to be demanding in terms of a salary, right? Because
No.
I just don't see the White Sox really churning out money. First of all, I don't see them churning out money for anybody, but for a position they already have somebody there and having to convince either Tim Anderson or the person you're paying a lot of money to play in a different position that maybe they don't want to, even though, again, Nick, I've never played an ounce of baseball in my life, but I couldn't imagine that going from shortstop to second base would be tremendously difficult for a world-class athlete that plays baseball every day. I know it's different. Everything's different, right? But it's still an infield position. I couldn't imagine to be all that difficult. Now, there's going to be people that probably will tell me, yes, it is. You're crazy. I just think that somebody would, if you're really good at your job, you can figure it out. So I don't see it happening. I don't know what he's going to be commanding. And I don't see the Sox paying for a position that they already have a slot for.
In the article, this is why the Sox are not the favorite. They already have a starting shortstop in Tim Anderson, who is controllable through 2024 via a $14 million club option. And the Sox haven't been linked to the free agent market yet. So the Anderson thing, I remember Ozzie Guillen talking about shifting positions because we were all discussing the Elvis Andrus situation. Could he move to second? And Guillen, I would say far better than average shortstop during his time. Said on the pre or post in NBC Sports Chicago, it's actually a lot easier. The preferred move is from shortstop to third base because you're on the same side of the infield. Right. When you move to second, things move a little bit quicker. It's a little different for you. Now with the shift band, I don't know, maybe not. Different angle, it's a different look. But with Anderson looking to really get paid in a couple of years, I don't see why he would shift positions and not look very good defensively when it's contract time. And some team, not that a team is really going to be looking, for him defensively, but still, you're going to want to be playing your best baseball when he wants to get paid soon. I could see him if he's going to move Tim Anderson, outfield. Yeah. That would,
here's the interesting thing, Nick, as we're saying all this, and it is winter time and it's a lot of hypotheticals and what ifs this time of year. But you know what the sad thing is, Nick? That you and I have had conversations, today being one of them, about players that exist on this team and seeing if they maybe could go and play a different position because our organization won't go out and get people that are second basemen to play the position.
Yeah,
because we've, and I have had conversations on here about what if Moncada moved back to second, and then we go out and I don't remember who at the time we were talking about maybe playing third or going out and getting this third baseman. But instead of actually going out and getting a frickin' second baseman, we're talking about, well, what if we move this guy over here? Why don't you just go out and get a second baseman? Why don't you just go out and get a right fielder? How about that? How about that plan of attack? Instead of always having the fans having to come up with these ideas of convincing players to go and play different positions. And what if they could do it or couldn't do it? And we have to ask ex-managers how hard it would be for somebody to change the position. Get a second baseman, for crying out sideways.
It has been a long, long time since they had a consistent second baseman. And I just think it is so important to have that relationship, second baseman, shortstop, to develop some chemistry, strength down the middle. They've been lacking it. And you're absolutely right. It's these crazy games that not only we as fans have to hypothesize, but them as an organization do this of, well, I think, we could put Vaughn in the outfield and try to ruin his early career for a while. I think Sheets, boy, we're going to be bad defensively, but we kind of really want his lefty back because we never really upped for a power hitting lefty corner outfielder. We never really wanted to go all in. We tried with, Nomar Mazara and bringing back Adam Eaton, but, we're going to keep Sheets in right and see how that goes, right? Like they're flexible. There's versatility there. That I agree with you. That is, you boiled it down to what we've been talking about. Like just go out and get a proven second baseman. Get a proven right fielder. We don't have to play these games anymore of guys playing out of position. And then the whole argument with Vaughn these days of, well, I mean, look at his numbers. Can he really he's been trying to figure out left field and right field. He played some second base this past year. The Sox have him so screwed up because of what they've been trying to do. I don't blame the guy for not having the best numbers offensively.
I don't either. And him too. I mean, he's had some back issues, and when you've got back issues, it's going to be a tricky thing, especially in terms of your power. So, this is what we're reduced to as fans, Nick. It really is. It's like, well, I don't know. I'm sure there is. I'm sure we're not the only fan base that has to come up with this type of stuff. We always look towards the cream of the crop, right? And what good organizations do this and good organizations do that. But there are a lot of baseball teams out there. Not all of them are fantastic. I'm sure that there's other fan bases that look at their team and go, why do we do things this way? And why would we do this? But it just seems so us. It's so on brand for the Chicago White Sox to operate in such a moronic fashion half the time. And you just wonder, it's like, man, I'm just a fan. I'm just a dude. I don't understand why this seems so hard to come up with the idea of, get a second baseman to play second base. Yeah. I don't, why is it hard for you to do that?
And it's the same positions every single year, every single off season. It's the same positions. And no, we're not the only team, we're not. There are other teams that ownership and the front office is just, they don't know what they're doing. But there are teams that seem to have plans, and they're ready to throw money, and the deals have already gone down. The Mariners, the Blue Jays, you hear about what the Cubs are going after and making, shortstop a priority, and they're going to spend money. And, obviously the Yankees have been active already, bringing Rizzo back, and they're having talks with Aaron Judge. And look, that's just been the way as a White Sox fan. It really, you hate to admit it. And I think folks that are new to the fandom that are waiting, for Rick Hahn to do something, it's like, well, welcome. This is just unfortunately how it is. And it's going to be a long off season. However, 3 years ago, November 21st, okay, we're here at that actual anniversary. 3 years ago, the Sox were actually extremely aggressive, and they signed Yasmani Grandal November 21st, 2019, to the richest Sox contract in history, a 4-year, $73 million deal. And they had a plan. They jumped it right away, brought him in. Grandal said all the right things. And then the next day they re-signed Jose Abreu to that 3-year deal. And they tried to get Zach Wheeler that offseason. That didn't work out. The consolation prize was Dallas Keuchel. The Sox were active.
You're bringing up a lot of names today that I didn't think I'd have to think about again.
Here's a name. They had to make room on the 40-man roster for Yasmani Grandal. So who did the Sox designate? They got rid of Polka. Daniel Polka was the guy that they had to release to make room for Grandal. So
remember Daniel Polka's 14 majestic home runs that he hit in a White Sox uniform, and we were really excited about that. And
future right fielder.
Good Lord. And then he couldn't hit his way out of a wet paper bag. But let's talk Grandal for a minute, because it's been interesting. If you are a subscriber to Merkin's newsletter, I'm sure you get Scott Merkin's newsletter. He talked a lot about it, I think, in his last article, if I'm correct on that. And Grandal doing a lot of work with the Blackhawks strength and conditioning coach Paul Goodman, and trying to get his endurance up. I'm sure that has a lot to do with his flexibility and being able to block balls behind the plate and doing some different things and taking a different approach in terms of getting his body and especially his lower half right. Because Grandal talked a lot about, at least in this article, not about not having his endurance really and not being able to make it through a season. And it'll be interesting to see if Grandal can recapture what he lost, and recapture mainly the power that he lost, and recapture a little bit. He was never a fantastic catcher in terms of, all around defensive catcher, but where he shined was his framing ability,
Mm-hmm.
right? And his ability to steal pitches for his pitchers, and make them look better than they were. And I think he lost a lot of that. And he obviously wasn't being back there is number one. You have to be available, and he wasn't a lot of the time. So that takes that part away. But there's a lot of pass balls, and there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
catcher interference, and there's a lot of times where he just seems like he can't set up back there the way he wants because his body just fails him. So it'll be interesting to see in his last year of his contract, and we're on the anniversary, as you mentioned, of the richest contract in White Sox history, if it'll go down as a lot of money not well spent yet again, and or if he can salvage something here and have a kind of a comeback year. And I don't think there wasn't one year that he's been with the Sox that you go, wow, he was fantastic. He's had, I'd say, spurts where you go,
He
okay,
had that
there's a reason why.
Post All-Star game 2021,
Yeah,
he was on
yeah,
fire. He
yeah.
was just, I mean, he was on a pace, man. He was
He hit 20
dangerous.
plus home runs after
Yeah,
if memory serves.
and to use that as your only samples, like just to say, wow, yeah, if we could, but that was a couple months. That
Yeah.
was like 2-3 months. And at his age, after all the injuries he's had, I find it really difficult to bank on him. Of everybody that you want to return to accustomed levels,
Mm-hmm.
he's the one that I'm saying I don't know. I mean, I have no problem with the contract that they went after and signed him for. I really don't. He had a great year with Milwaukee. That was a guy that they targeted. The catcher, I get it. And he brings switch hitting power.
Yeah.
Okay, and they did it early. They didn't screw around. Hey, how excited were you? I remember that day.
Oh, we were
I
excited.
mean,
I mean, a lot
gosh.
of it was, again, the thought of the left-handed power, which again we've talked a lot about as White Sox fans. Is where's this left-handed power? He's a guy that should be giving you left-handed power. Him and Moncada should be providing you 40 plus home runs between the two of them from the left side of the plate. And they're both switch hitters, but they should be hitting the left-handed side of the plate is where their power, mostly comes from. And when you can't do that, I mean, it's kind of a lost spot. But I was excited about it for that reason, and again, from what we heard about in terms of the framing of pitches,
Yeah.
right? Because you'll tell me till you're blue in the face about how pitching matters, and it always does, and it's going to win and lose you playoff games eventually. And if you can have a guy receiving the ball behind the plate that dresses everything up for an umpire, I mean, that's an advantage to your club. So that's what I was excited about: power and the framing ability. And when you don't get either one,
Well, when you
it's kind
can't
of a
stay
loss.
healthy,
Yeah,
when you can't stay healthy, and so that's when I started thinking Sox are, kicking the tires on Sean Murphy from Oakland. When you've got Grandal, is that because you really don't have a lot of faith in him defensively this year, and you really looked at him to get himself right? Which, if you're staying in Chicago and you're a native from Miami and you're staying in Chicago for the offseason to work on this, I give you a lot of credit.
yeah,
He wants to get better. I think he was embarrassed and what he turned in this past season, disappointed that his body couldn't, keep up. And he's got a plan. And I've read the plan and it's great. I like what he's been saying. Can he actually put this in play though? And can it all go right? There's a lot of ifs. There's a
yeah.
lot of ifs and ands. And
Well, he's got motivation, right, Nick? I mean, it's a last year of a contract. I'm sure he's going to want at least one more contract before he hangs it up. So, in order to get that, in order to get it paid, whether it's here or with another team, he's got to perform. So, I guess the silver lining in this is, Nick, I like a motivated last year of the contract type of guy on my team with something to prove, because you're going to get the absolute best out of him. Now, whether his absolute best is good enough for us or not is to be seen.
Yeah. Pedro Grifol should be a bonus. Just the stuff that you hear from Perez, Salvi Perez, and what he has said and how much Grifol has helped him. You got to think that's gonna play with Grandal. And Grandal has said, I'd like to stay in Chicago after this contract. I'd like to continue this relationship with the White Sox. So, he came here for a lot of different reasons. I think he came here because of the pitching prospects and what the White Sox had at that point. And they still kind of do. There's holes in that starting rotation that need to get figured out. But I'll always think about this date of, it's the richest contract they ever gave out, but they were aggressive. They were very aggressive early on in the offseason.
Right now, let's just say it is November after all, right, Nick? But if you had to guess, let's put the over-under at 100 games for Grandal behind the plate this year. Is he over or under 100 games starting catcher behind the plate?
Under.
You think so?
I do. I do think.
And so you think it's back to injury, or you think he's going to be playing more as a DH?
I think that. Yeah, I think he's going to be utilized in other ways. I think if he can get his legs right, which obviously is where his power's coming from, and he can get a swing back and feel confident, I think that's the Sox are going to figure out some way to use that. I just do.
So is that going to be to the benefit of the team, or is that a detriment to the team if he's not starting more than 100 games behind the plate?
It's a detriment. I really do. And that's just, again, like, look, a catcher that's in their 30s that has had multiple leg injuries and procedures. I'm sorry. It's just, it is what it is. It's black and white. Now, there's no doubt it could happen. There's no doubt, he might be hip to a new way of training. Maybe he's got a new catching stance that he's comfortable with that's going to take pressure off of his legs as he's gotten older. He might be learning some new tricks this offseason. It sounds like he really wants to put the work in, but I'm just going off of just father time. It's tough to outrun that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And again, a very interesting route working out with an NHL team, and we know what those guys have to do to get their bodies right, especially goalies, and what they have to do to get them prepared for a night in and night out basis to do that. So it's an interesting approach. We'll see if it pays dividends, but there's a long way to go before we get to pitchers and catchers reporting in February.
I want him to get right for his bat. I could, if he can catch, I actually rather see Sebi Savala catch, honestly. Yeah. But I want to see him right for his bat. If we could somehow utilize his bat and they could get creative. And I think that's why they were kicking the tires on Sean Murphy. They're like, we've got a plan somehow for Grandal's bat. We think that's going to come back with his legs coming back. We don't really have a lot of faith in his ability to be behind the plate. So let's see about this Murphy deal. The Sox have so many other issues that they need to figure out, though, on this team. And I think pitching is top priority. But it's a long off season. I hope he can bounce back. I absolutely, I love that he's putting the work in. It's just we've heard it before.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, Nick, and as we're starting to wind down, this podcast and another fantastic episode by you, because you're always well prepared, and I just show up and then wing it most of the time. This team still probably has the most talent in the division. And this team, most likely, if the season started today, I think would be favored to win this division. Even though the Guardians did what they did, we're gonna bitch and moan a lot this offseason and see where it lands us. But there still is talent on this team. I think we all just wish the organization at one time in our lives would push the chips in and really, leave no doubt in terms of who is the best in this division, and not just, well, I think we're good enough. We'll see how it plays out. And I don't think that's going to ever happen until, or ownership changes in one way, shape, or form. But it is what it is. It's better than other times in our lives, Nick, when we just kind of wake up on opening day and go, we don't have a chance. I think when we get to opening day, we're going to still look at this team and go, we've got a chance. We're not going to be thrilled with everything that's been done in this offseason, but I think we'll get to that point, Nick, and go, yeah, I could see where this could play out in our favor.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. The AL Central's weak. It's going to be weak again. It's very winnable. We've got the talent for that. But that was not the plan for 2023. Like, we should be talking about the divisions in the bag. We're talking about, can we win the pennant? What's the AL pennant look like? Who is going to be competing with us for the pennant? Because you better believe we're going to be there, and you're going to have to go through us. It's the whole, trying to capture lightning instead of bringing the thunder. And because the division is so weak, I think there's a real temptation by the front office to not go crazy, because we could probably still win. We could recapture the AL Central
and they'll look at it and goes, it doesn't, as long as you get in the tournament, it's
sure
anybody could win.
Oh yeah.
Who's got the hot pitching staff and we got a shot. So, which again is not the way that any kind of major league team or major organization should look at it. It should be, I want to get to as good as humanly possible and leave as little to, chance as I can. And hope that, I've done enough work that I should be looking at least a pennant, as you mentioned.
You don't want a ton of question marks. You want to limit your question marks, and if there are freak injuries, there's freak injuries. But it won't be for a lack of preparedness. Like, you set this team up for success. You went out and you filled all the holes as best as possible. You've got premium talent at every position. Nobody's playing the position for the first time ever, and out of position. You've got a solid lineup, and if things happen, but you did your work. You took care of business. So we got a few minutes here. You want to talk about how to prepare a turkey?
Oh my goodness gracious! I thought you'd never ask. I've been waiting for 46 minutes. So let me tell you this, Nick. Have you ever cooked a turkey in your life?
I have. When we lived in DC for a couple of years, we celebrated a Thanksgiving on our own.
I'm going to tell you, if you've never...
It took us like 16 hours to...
Oh, my goodness gracious.
We were off on some of the measurements and such.
Well, I'm going to tell you what right now, for all our listeners out there, if you've never hosted a Thanksgiving in your life and you're cooking a turkey for the first time, there's a lot of fantastic ways you can go about preparing your bird. But I believe 100% in brining your bird. Okay. If you are going to have a juicy, wonderfully plump bird, you have to brine it. Brining is the key, Nick, because...
Pretend I have no idea what brining is.
Okay, so brine is a salt and sugar solution with other spices. I make mine with a vegetable broth. I take about a gallon of vegetable broth, some peppercorns. You can put some allspice berries in there, and brown sugar and lots of salt. You boil that, and then you cool it all the way down. You put it in your fridge for a couple days. Then you pour that solution into a large bucket, if you will. I use a big Gatorade bucket, like they pour.
Okay, something at Home Depot. Can you just get a big, orange bucket?
Just make sure it's clean. Sure. You pour that in there, and then about a gallon of ice water, and then you dump your bird in there for 8 hours, and you flip it. You turn it around halfway through, and what it does by osmosis, all the spices and everything you put in your brine get trapped inside the muscle of the bird. And then when you cook your bird, even when you cook it, the juices, all the flavoring doesn't come out. So what happens is when you roast your bird, you lose all the flavor and things because it evaporates. But when you brine it, it gets trapped in there, and it's fantastic. Make sure when you take your bird out of the roaster or out of the oven, you let it rest for a good 20 to 25 minutes before you cut it, because that will, your juices will disperse and you'll lose a lot of that. So let it rest for 20 to 25 minutes before you carve it up. It is going to be juicy and fantastic. You don't need to do a whole lot in terms of injecting it. You remember seeing this on infomercials where they're injecting their birds, kind of like, like Jose Canseco, like
watching the wrong channels, apparently.
Injections into their ass. That was a while back when they would be selling that, snake oil, this stuff out there. But lots of butter. You just rub that on the skin beforehand and some salt and pepper, some very light seasonings, brine it beforehand. And Nick, you're going to have a fantastic turkey and you're going to love it. And the leftovers are going to be fantastic. Nobody likes leftovers, but if you have a brine turkey, you're going to love.
I love Thanksgiving leftovers. They're my favorite type of leftovers.
There you go.
So this sounds like maybe a 3-day process. You take take the week off of work. There's very little sleep. And
you have to. So depending on when you
got multiple alarms set all over the place.
I will put the turkey in the brine at probably like 10 o'clock the night before, and then set my alarm 4 hours later. Wake up, go down, and you put it in your garage too, because you have to put it out in your garage where it's cool. You go out in your garage in your underpants, and you take out this turkey. It's all sopping wet, and you flip it over. And this is all perfectly wonderful. There's no salmonella or anything. And then you put it back in there, put the lid back on, and then 8 hours later, you take it out, pat it dry, put some butter all over it, some seasoning, boom, in the roaster. 4 to 5 hours later, you got a perfect turkey, my friend.
Man, I really think that, and I'm not joking around. You might want to consider like a food podcast. Maybe we should do that. This is great. This is absolutely great. I wish we didn't bury it at the end of this episode.
Well, well, that's what you do, Nick. You always save the best for last. Yeah, that's why you keep the listeners hanging on edge. Pat might talk about, roasting a turkey at some point, and I have to stay to the end of this podcast to hear about it.
Yeah. Well, it sounds fantastic. You're going to have to obviously clue us in next episode on how it turned out, and if your method worked.
It's worked in the past. I mean, it's a proven method.
It's a proven method. Does temperature change? I mean, does the temperature in the garage have to be a certain degrees?
No, because what you do, you fill it with ice water. The ice water and the bucket is that I have, the Gatorade bucket, it's insulated. So that's going to stay wonderful. The ice will keep it from forming bacteria. It's going to be fantastic. Believe me.
It sounds amazing. Sounds like you really know what you're talking about.
I've cooked a couple birds, my friend.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you passing this along to me and everybody listening.
And the next time you cook a turkey, Nick, which is, every other week for you, I'm sure, you just let me know and I'll walk you through it.
Turkeys don't necessarily just need to be Thanksgiving. So I wish that became more of a, just a random Sunday, have yourself a turkey meal.
Absolutely.
And I will call on you for that.
I will help you. I'll walk you through it. And maybe next year I'll give you my stuffing recipe.
We'll do it live. We'll do a live episode next time so you can be in the kitchen doing all of this. Like Dean Richards on WGN.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. As long as we have a 4-hour runway, we can make that happen.
We can figure that out. Pat, an absolute pleasure, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and enjoy it. And all our listeners out there, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to take this podcast with you, pass it along to other Sox fans in your life. We really appreciate the loyalty and the listens, and it's been a wild ride. I can't believe we're approaching season 5 in a couple weeks. Hopefully some more White Sox content that we can get to. Maybe they surprise us, maybe they're aggressive. We will cover it. You can find this podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcasts. We are on Twitter at Good Guys TV. We've got a Facebook fan page. Always a pleasure, my friend. For Pat Hester, I am Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.